today's episode. Today I've asked Alex Truesdale to come on the podcast just so that we can talk about property and property ownership, because often when I ask clients how they own their property, they don't even know how to answer that question, let alone understand the real differences between joint tenancy and tenancy in common. So welcome again, Alex, and thank you for your time. I see you come bearing chocolate to explain property ownership. So should we start with the beginning? In simple terms, what's the difference between the two?
Okay, for various historical reasons, the way that we own bricks and mortar, the way that we own land and buildings within England and Wales has grown up in a particularly interesting way. And what we talk about is legal ownership and beneficial ownership. And this is all to do with the way that the courts were structured and our system of law developed. And so I have brought some chocolate around today. I would like to point out that other chocolate is available.
Of course.
But I've gone with our favourite brands, and I'm looking forward to the immediate aftermath.
Yes, exactly. Like the short episode.
Very short episode, very short piece of chocolate. And so I've actually brought along a double-decker bar to explain what the difference between legal and beneficial ownership is. And so here is my double-decker, and as you can see, there is a layer of nougat sitting on top of a layer of chocolate Rice Krispie.
Yeah.
And so the way I like to think about it is that the nougat is the legal title. This is what appears on the land registry, and it's what you do when you look at who actually legally owns a property. But actually what's going on underneath is the beneficial ownership. This is the equitable title. So these are my Rice Krispies. And this is where the value actually is. And this is what is transmitted. And the way that this is held can differ. The legal title is always going to be on what's called a joint tenancy, which means that you've got multiple owners, and as they die, the survivors continue the ownership. So it's last woman standing. But the beneficial ownership can be held in different ways. And the way I do that, again, is with other pieces of chocolate. Most people will own their property on a joint tenancy. And so this is a slicker star. And there's one of them. So you've got two people both holding onto the chocolate bar. They don't have divisible shares in it. And again, if one dies, the other ends up holding all the beneficial interest.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means all the eggs are in their basket. And so for a will, it would mean that whatever a will says about a joint tenancy is actually irrelevant, because survivorship will trump the will. Okay, so that's joint tenancy. The other way that you can own a property is as tenants in common. And so this is a Twix bar.
Yes.
And so with this, if you've got more than one person holding the beneficial interest, they can own it as separate bars in separate shares, and that can then be transmitted in the will. And these bars don't have to be the same size. The presumption would be two people will own 50-50, but it might be that actually they've contributed different amounts to a property, and so they might own a 70-30 or 90-10. And when that happens, it means that you make a will and you're dealing with your own separate piece of a property.
And so from a client's point of view, what's the benefit to them of, as you say, twixing their property?
Twixing the property, severing the beneficial interest, as we like to call it, is advantageous, because then in your wills you can actually determine where your particular share goes. It doesn't have to go to your co-owner. And this is something that historically most married couples would buy a house together. They buy it on a joint tenancy because if one were to die in an untimely way, they'd want that to go to their bereaved spouse. But these days we've got many more circumstances of joint property ownership where you might just be starting out. You might buy with a sibling or a best friend, or you might be buying with a romantic partner, but these days you never say never, do you? So it can be a really good way of regulating where your share goes to if that relationship goes wrong. And obviously in my sphere, I'm looking at things going wrong because you've died, but obviously breakups or financial difficulties can arise. And so that's where really determining what your share is can mean that you can more faithfully follow your family or your life circumstances.
And I think you mentioned that it's also a way of you having some control of what happens to your half of the property after you've died, and let's say your partner remarries or something like that. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Sure. Yes, with a joint tenancy, if I was married and I died first, my husband would take all, and obviously my concern then is that I would want him to be happy. Obviously after a long and sincere period of mourning, I'd want him to find love again.
Yeah.
But what that would worry me about is that I've got 2 daughters who I would like to have my inheritance one day, independently of anything my husband might do or not do with his inheritance, with his new family. And, particularly for me, my husband might have more children.
Yeah.
I don't want to see my daughter's inheritance diluted, and I don't want to see them disinherited, because we've all seen Cinderella. So what I would want to do instead in my will, and what I have done in my will, if you're watching, is that I have left a life interest in my share of our property so that my husband can enjoy that property. I don't want to move him out. I don't want to evict him. But I want him to be able to enjoy that, but not be able to give it on to anybody or not have it eroded if he had financial problems, if his marriage broke down. I don't want my girls missing out. And so that's why a tenancy in common allows me to dictate how my will operates over my share.
What are the next steps? So someone thinks, that sounds of interest to me. What should they do first?
Okay. The first thing they should do is get a land registry search, and you can do that online with 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹, and it costs £7 to do so. The second thing is then they print off the full search and they look at what's called proprietorship register. It's section B of the land registry search, and on it hopefully you'll find your name and your co-owner's name.
Mm-hmm.
Now if that's the only thing that is there, and there is no other wording at all, then you've got a joint tenancy. Okay? If there's anything else, if there are any restrictions, you need to look really carefully at those and make sure that you ask somebody qualified, because there will be a particular restriction, a paragraph of wording that will indicate to conveyancers and legal executives and will writers that this is a tenancy in common. So that's the way to do it on the land registry search. But the way to put it absolutely beyond doubt is to make sure you have a declaration of trust.
And so do you do that whole bit, or do they need a property solicitor as well to do the separation?
I can do the separation. What I can't do, and where you need someone to come back in for, is where you've got it separate and you want to unite it for any reason.
Okay, well brilliant. I think everyone will clearly understand 𝗤𝗏𝗄𝑖ng, double deckers and stickers. So thank you very much, Alex, for making it so easy to understand.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.